extra time waiting for the acolyte. I am gonna catch that fool. You will think I'm really cool. All I wanna do is impress you with my mouse trap. All I wanna do is convince you with my cheese. All I'll do is be the coolest cat here, but I'll need some more super breed. Just watch me, mouse. Just watch me catch you. Just watch me, mouse. Just watch me catch you, catch you, catch you. All I wanna do is impress you with my mouse trap. All I wanna do is convince you with my cheese. All I wanna do is be the coolest cat here, but I'll need some more super breed. Oh, but I need some more super breed. Oh, but I need some more super breed. We got to clean these rodents out. There ain't no way we're gonna let them run this place. I'll show them what this king's about. It won't be long before we get them on the run. We got to clean these rodents out. There ain't no way we're gonna let them run this place. I'll show them what this king's about. It won't be long before we get them on the run. We got to clean these rodents out. There ain't no way we're gonna let them run this place. I'll show them what this king's about. It won't be long before we get them on the
Hello, MouseHunt. Welcome to Feedback Friday. What day is it today? It is June. Is it June? I'm pretty sure it's June. It's June 16. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. Hey, Michelle waving in the chat. Hello, Michelle. Chris Tarocco, afternoon to you. Math, welcome in. Arctic's having a bit of a heat wave. Well, then the name has a little bit of irony to it, doesn't it, Arctic? Hopefully you're keeping cool enough in that heat wave. Michelle's far too warm. I take it the UK is just cooking a little bit. We've got the opposite trend going in our neck of the woods. It's been a little bit cool the last few days, but I'll take it anyway. Hello, Keith. Math. Hello, hello. Peter. Good morning to you. Eric. Hello. Lady Nutsy. Nice to see you as always. Ryan Diamond Yoshira. Hello, hello. Jonathan, Sri KDM poking his head in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Dallas Sareem. Trocco, I think I already got you. I'm not sure, actually. Hello, Aleem and Nathan. Nice to see you. Aaron, well, today, give a quick little update too. The auto harp has been Oh, just starting to break ground a little bit on that. I know we kind of shared this for the past few couple weeks. We were trying to see, was this a must-have before Leaping Lavish? But ultimately we decided to prioritize Leaping Lavish because it kind of changes things quite a bit. It lets you do something you otherwise couldn't do manually by yourself. Whereas the auto harp, you can. It's more of a convenience thing. It doesn't let you do anything that you couldn't otherwise do, other than maybe on that very last hunt. You can hunt with Ruby, even if you're going to completely fill the noise bar. But outside of that, we decided to prioritize Leaping Lavish and try to get that in as soon as we can. Because anytime you change how something works, the longer it's out there before you make that change, usually the harder it gets to make that change. So we were trying to kind of get that first wave of impactful stuff in as soon as we could, just to kind of hopefully ease some of the friction around around changing things after it started. It's always nothing we like to do too lightly. Kind of the golden rule is once you start a game, you shouldn't change the rules while the game is up and running, or mid game. Imagine you're playing a sports game and you make your strategy and you're halfway through the game and I was like, actually, you know what? I'm going to change the rules of how you're supposed to pass the ball. But hold on, I've just made a bunch of decisions. So, it's not something we like to do too frequently or too often unless, it comes with a whole lot of, good thought behind it as well. So definitely seeing a lot of, sentiments of players looking to go through the rooms a little bit quicker. And so, it took a little bit of time to put things together. In a way where you're still using resources to be able to go through a little bit quicker. That's kind of why we did end up deciding to prioritize Leaping Lavish over the auto harp. That said, hey, we've broken some ground on the auto harp, but we also want to take our time. Make sure we test this out as well. Anytime you're building new interfaces, kind of increases the amount of testing you need to do just to make sure everything's good to go. So we weren't sure if we were having a Feedback Friday today. I had some technical challenges I had to work through, and then even when I got going, it still wasn't working right. But I was managing to get it sorted out, get my camera working in time. Michelle, you think the auto harp will be greatly appreciated? Yeah, absolutely. If you've ever been, up hunting with a cheese in a room where you're making a whole lot of noise and then you get a little bit distracted and you come back a little bit late, it's easy to miss that end of the hallway. I will say, when you get about halfway through the room, just, maybe just play the harp, so you got to know you're kind of risking it a little bit. If you're looking to play the harp on the very last step of a hallway to not waste a single harp string, well, that, trying to save a few harp strings sometimes comes with a little bit of risk. So make sure you're up for that extra challenge if you're going to go that way. But it's been great food for thought for us as well. As we mentioned previously, a few weeks ago, even before the area came out, when we were playtesting, we started to the resource management's difficult here. It's probably the most difficult in the whole game. But as I phrased it before, well, you got the narrative of you're a bean counter. So, the fact that you got to kind of count some resources in a way seemed thematically appropriate, and especially for the first Viceroy. But, it's been some good food for thought to maybe just kind of dial things back a little bit. We like a nice variety of areas in the game as well. But just, kind of maybe dial back some of the difficulty level of some of the resource management and kind of have more, make some front-loaded decisions and I can watch numbers go up for a while, which is kind of what we're working on right now. We've kind of started the next area. We've broken ground on the auto harp. And kind of we have maps a little bit on the back burner right now as well. I mean, an auto harp would be really great overnight, absolutely, especially with the addition of Leaping Lavish. It is certainly very useful. If you kind of have a few extra pieces of Leaping Lavish, maybe you've got 10 pieces, and just in case you jump past one room you don't want to, the auto harp will keep you from exiting. Thought you already wasted a feather with Leaping Lavish in the dungeon because of the low noise limit. Hope auto harp comes ASAP. Well, there you go. Yeah, that'll help. In the meantime, if you craft small batches of it, that said, sometimes you end up with a big chunk of it, but that is a good time maybe to do a Great Hall run. Arctic, is the mouse behind me in the game? No, it's not. I think it is just an illustration for this splash screen that gets used for kind of some loading things in the mobile app, as well as a few different marketing text things around the game, and putting together some various pieces of art. Just kind of this background illustration gets put to a few uses, but it's just kind of a random mouse that was illustrated for the sake of that illustration. So yay for Leaping Lavish already. Next up, we're eagerly awaiting the auto harp. Well, good to know. Hey, we've broken some ground on it, but hopefully you can bear with us a little bit of patience because we want to make sure everything's working as intended. And like I said, anytime you make a interface and add a new interface, kind of requires a little bit more testing just to make sure everything's working as intended. There's always kind of some different states, different things you can click, different states you can be in. I mean, changing the rules is fine if it helps the players. Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely the intention. Nobody sits down and ever has the intention of doing the opposite. So, in hindsight, it seems obvious, but a lot, as we went over a couple weeks ago, it was the emerging play style of find the ultimate room. Whereas when we were playing it, we typically, I often make the comparison to a game of cards. You have to deal or have to play with the cards you've been dealt. And the difficulty of it is knowing how to win even when you haven't been dealt the strongest hand. And so giving you lots of tools to try to overcome and still win, even though when you don't have the strongest hand. But, hindsight, it does seem obvious that then, without any sort of time limit or other restriction, players would just seek out the strongest possible hand every single time, even if it's not particularly advantageous. So, then we had that eureka moment of a cheese that costs harpstring. So it's the same thing. You go up to the Grand Hall, or the Great Hall, and you're using harp strings to make noise and produce eggs the whole time you're up there, and you're trying to get out as quickly as possible, and you're hoping you end on an ultimate room, but maybe it's an extreme room. So by having a cheese that lets you see rooms a little bit quicker, but it's costing you harp strings, you kind of sacrifice that play style to be able to see more rooms. Gordon, green beans are the best beans, eh? Jonathan, you're loving the app update. Thanks again, Parm, for fixing the tap when scrolling bug. That is a good segue, actually. Because we did, a couple weeks ago, just go over a few little tweaks, particularly for the mobile app. Hopefully now, if you haven't already, visit the App Store, Google Play, download the latest update. This has been updated for not just the Beanstalk, but I believe the whole Folklore Forest region, because we've kind of reused the same cheese selector interface, just spaced out some of the buttons so that arming a cheese and crafting more of it a little further apart, a little harder to accidentally hit the wrong part of that that box. I was going mad one night on the couch. I was trying to craft cheese and I kept arming and disarming my cheese. And I know a lot of other hunters had similar feedback. So that should be out now. If you update your app, all the confirm steps as well, kind of, again, in hindsight, seemed obvious, but players accidentally go, I swear, I hit the ballroom, but I ended up in the dungeon. It was because the dungeon was selected by default. So now you have to tap which floor you want to go to. You have to hit a button that says plant, and then you have to confirm. So you have kind of one last chance to read exactly where you're going into. As well as that, as mentioned, that fix for when you go to scroll and it registers as a tap. That was mighty annoying. And just, hats off to Dev Param for finally figuring out a way to overcome that technical limitation the app has had for a long time. Because that is just feeling great. So hopefully everyone's been able to experience, if you're a mobile player, been able to experience some of those updates. Because they are awfully great. Like I said, especially the one with the scroll to tap. It's been years. I just started to get used to it. When I'm using the app, I try to find a safe spot to scroll on. Hopefully that's a thing of the past. That muscle memory can just fade away over time, and now you can rest your finger anywhere to scroll, even if that place seems to be a button. Dallas, you're a big fan of passive resource management. Let me make my decisions as far in advance as possible. And that is often a good fit for MouseHunt. We often call that front-loaded decision-making. Whereas this area has a little bit of a mix, depending on what your goal is. Sometimes you got to front-load your decisions. Sometimes they come a little bit later. So it's nice to have a mix where, for some areas, hunters really like passive and kind of resource management style. In other areas, hunters more like, I'm going to build up a good supply of things and then set it and forget it. So it's always nice. One of the beauties about the game is every area can be a little bit different. And that way, it's like a unique game in each area that you visit. And so we can try to find a spot that everybody likes that way. Gonson's watching the skies over there. Alas, no word. No word from any traveling merchant when she might visit. Jonathan, do you think that mouse looks a bit like Leafton? Hold on. Maybe I can just move myself here. Where's the camera? We'll have to... believe you're referring to this, yeah. That's just a random illustration. I don't know if there's a backstory of inspiration there. I don't know if it's part of the Beanwell or the Leafton clan. Alex Franco's shop begs to differ, and that'll always just right there with the salt mines, Alex. If you can, if you played a number of years, if we might be going back a good 15 years, but that may just have to live in the game's folklore right up there with the salt mines. Potato, on the topic of leaping, no larger increase to the trap goose cost. You've seen people look at the increase as very small. We erred on the side of caution. We didn't want to push it too far. So, at the end of the day, you can collect eggs quicker. And the goose went up by 33%. And yeah, I'd say you could probably collect eggs about 50% quicker. Maybe even if you're really smart and resourceful, you could probably even go a little bit quicker than that. So we kind of split the difference a little bit. Obviously, it's a hard spot to be in. Kind of making that adjustment. Just kind of needed to rip the Band-Aid off there, but we didn't want to push it too far either. But obviously, when we sit down and we come up with the cost of the goose, right, when the initial area released, we have to set it somewhere. We have to kind of pick where that bar lies. I think everyone would agree if Vinius on the Beanstalk dropped a goose every time you capture it, well, that would probably be a bit too easy, right? So then there's that, and then there's whatever the opposite extreme of that is. So obviously you have to pick that spot somewhere. So just, know we kind of made eggs faster to collect, so that's why the goose went up a little bit. That said, we did increase how quickly it can collect eggs more than how much the goose went up. So overall, it's a touch easier, depending on how you approach and how you strategize things. But that was just kind of soft in the edge. We didn't want to push it too far either. You like to have more complexity as it gives more strategies. The difficulty comes with not making it complicated. You like the added challenge of resource management, Jack. Yeah, it's often a phrase we use as well. Complexity is good, complicated is bad. But that said, different difficulty levels for different areas is kind of a good mix as well. So kind of there's highs and lows. But there's definitely, like I said, even when we're playtesting, it's like, I've gotten a calculator out, I think, more than any other area in the game. Sometimes I sit down to think, all right, how much cheese do I need to make? But while we're playtesting, even all the devs playtesting, I think we all had our calculator out a little bit more often, which did give us pause. But that said, hopefully the end result is still fun if you like a kind of a challenging resource management style area. And just being the first viceroy, I think we kind of thought, well, it's good to have a few of those. You wouldn't want maybe every area in the game to have that sort of calculator level of difficulty of resource management. But hey, first kind of usher in the first viceroy area with something that's good and challenging, and then kind of go from there. So maybe we kind of reach the high water mark, and that'll be good feedback for future areas. Yeah, Moki, it's too much micro for you, or 5U. I assume you mean for you. But, and certainly that's fair. And I think different players like different levels of how much they have to kind of manage their hunting while they go. This area is up there in terms of, how much you need to watch what's going on, and the decisions you get to make throughout the day can really be impactful. But, no, our goal is always, like I said, to find a good mix. And this area kind of maybe push the envelope in terms of that level of difficulty and, how much you have to watch over things a little bit. But, we like to ebb and flow, and then we'll kind of work on areas that have the opposite vibe, a little bit more set and forget, where there's just a lot of preparation you do, and then once you have it all set, you just kind of tip the first domino and watch them all fall. Philip remembers the salt mines, eh? I remember the catacomb story was brewing as well. Yeah, that's way back then. I always picture those eras of MouseHunt in whatever office we were working from. I vividly remember the office we were in when the Catacombs was released for some reason. Squirk, the new mouse is fine, stays in line with other rare mice. I think it's about 5% if I'm not mistaken, which is about as low as we go without kind of starting to usher into the territory of an extremely rare mouse. 5% is more kind of where we gauge like uncommon. On average you get one per beanstalk. A little extra incentive. We had feedback from hunters who were using super breed to avoid failing to attract, and just kind of felt there wasn't enough of a diverse mouse pool there. So just add a little extra exciting moment that happens every once in a while. as well as dropping condensed creativity. So, every 20 super breed you use, just kind of one more condensed creativity, which is maybe a small amount in terms of each individual hunter, but kind of more big picture for the kind of marketplace economy as a whole. That's kind of adding a nice little trickle, one more source of it coming into the game through all hunters kind of working all together on it at the same time. Juan's loving the Leaping Lavish in the Beanstalk now. It had an interesting dynamic to us, even when it was being developed. Sort of before, one of the more, I guess I'll use the word boring, but one of the less exciting, there we go, there's one of the less exciting moments is when you get a back-to-back standard room. And because there's nothing you can do about it. It's just patience is the only thing you can exercise to get through that. And so it was by far kind of the slowest, least exciting moment. And the nice thing about adding Leaping Lavish is that it's almost like fast forward mode. It turns it into, okay, now I really need to pay attention because I'm moving really fast. It's like it's in a racing game and you hit the turbo boost. You hit the turbo pad on the racetrack and you tighten your grip on the wheel a little bit. And so, hopefully that resonates as players get used to using it. But at least for us in playtesting, that was one thing that we liked, was that it turned that less exciting moment into like, I got to tighten my grip on the wheel. And this is one of the more exciting moments now because I have to check back. I have to make sure every hour I'm checking my rooms and seeing, am I getting closer to stopping? But hey, maybe you're about to leave for the day, headed to bed, something like that. You just arm a different cheese. You'll slow back down. You'll wake up the next morning and you can resume that, more active, speedy pace. School maybe increase the number of geese for the shadow trap. That was a suggestion during development that we considered as well. Ultimately, we decided against it. Kind of didn't want to push that too far either. So we just found that middle ground where we made eggs quite a bit easier to collect, and then we kind of just brought the geese up a little bit closer to that without going all the way. So it's a nice middle ground. Gives us a little wiggle room as well as we think about maps and maybe other rewards that we might want to add to the areas, journal theme, things like that. So we have a little bit of wiggle room. That said, maps are a little bit on the back burner. I think just with a wave of changes coming to an area, kind of want to wait, parse all the feedback, let that all settle in a little bit, let hunters get used to how things are working. Like I said, it's a little bit stressful anytime you have to change an area after it's already been released, and maps will inevitably introduce another wave of changes to an area. So we just kind of want to give us time to digest and parse all the feedback from the first wave before we go ahead with maps. Diamond, you're using your calculator more as well. Yeah, I definitely, even on my phone, I'm using the calculator shortcut a little bit more often than I usually do in MouseHunt. But, like I said, hey, at least we're all bean counters in the area. So if nothing else, it'll keep the mind sharp. Then a few of us were looking forward to the long grind ahead to get all the traps in the Beanstalk. It's the same to see it shortened. I don't think it's shortened by all that much. To be honest, it is a little bit shorter. But I think there's still a good amount of stretch goals. And we'll kind of see. It'll be interesting to see when kind of the first shadow traps start being built. Make the next area the grind we want. One thing we've gotten over the years, and it's hard to kind of parse different ways of vocalizing it, but I think a repetitive grind isn't maybe as entertaining as one that has nice stages and phases to it. So, there could be a simpler version of this area where you go to the meadow and all the mice drop one golden egg, and when you get 1,000,000, you get to buy a trap, But I don't think anyone wants to sign up for that grind. I mean, maybe you do, just to say, hey, I did something that nobody else wants to do. But I think there's more meaningful accomplishments than just having pride in being able to get through something that other people find unfun. Hopefully we kind of aim, if something's going to take a long time, to make it a varied experience and a journey that has lots of phases to it. That's even something we picked up with the floating islands. That's another kind of long-term area. Takes a long time to get everything going and unlocked, and there's a grind to be had to be collecting the jewels, and that was some of the inspiration to add the Sky Palace, just to make it a more varied destination and journey, or a more varied journey toward the same destination, where you're doing low altitude islands to do high altitude islands, and then every once in a while you get to do a Sky Palace run, and then you're back to the low, to the high, and if you follow me, it kind of has more ebb and flow. And if you're going to be there for that long, to give it more phases and more variety, so it isn't the same thing over and over and over again. But I think another feedback we're trying to digest as well is maybe the grind needs to be spread out across multiple areas. And it's tricky because we're a small team, and it can be hard to produce areas at a good rate. But ideally, it would be nice to be able to spread some of these goals over 3 or 4 areas. So you get those moments of completionism a little bit sooner, and it's a stepping stone to your next big challenge, rather than kind of being anchored down in one spot for 8 months long. It might be nice to be in one spot for 3 months, another spot for 3 months, another spot for 3 months. And then there you go. There's a 9-month goal instead of an 8-month goal. But you get to visit different places. You kind of get to tour the world a little bit more and take in more of the scenery that way. Clay Silva silvered Vinius and not looking forward to going back to the vine. And, fair enough. And it's a challenge anytime we add new mice. And, it's not something we do, too lightly. And, feedback received. I don't think it's something we do all that often. So, we've certainly done it in the past here and there. But, I can understand. But similarly, if somebody has just finished a bunch of castle progress, you add a new mouse to the castle, you're going to kind of have the same problem. So, if anything, it's part of the challenge, especially being a crown hunter. You're a breed above. You're setting extra challenging goals for yourselves to go above and beyond. And so, everyone's in the same boat that way, to go and track down that mouse that many more times. Wax, will the next area be part of Folklore Forest as well? That is currently the plan. So it's a little bit too soon to go into too many specifics. But things are shaping up pretty well. We're kind of just tying up some ideation on it. I have a prototype that we've been playing. A little bit of concept art has been unfolding so far. And just once we actually kind of break ground on some production of the area beyond just concept work, I think we'll be able to share a little bit more. But at least right now, the plan is to be a Folklore Forest location. There's a very tentative another one after that, and then maybe a finale after that. But, grain of salt. Shouldn't have even said that. Please don't hold me to that. Plans can change over the course of years. But we're just trying, again, tell a story over the course of multiple locations rather than kind of one big, massive one. That takes a very long time. Many kind of smaller ones that all add up to still one big experience, but with many areas to go through to experience it all. Yeah, grinds are better if you're working for untradables. If you grind for a tradable, there has to be profit. Otherwise, there's no motivation. Everyone has different goals. I think that's the beauty, too, of any kind of big, especially multiplayer game, something that has an economy. You get all sorts of different kind of types of player or different types of goals you can set for yourself. So, if you're motivated more by kind of optimizing your gameplay for in-game gold, that's one goal to get versus, a crown hunter. You can't buy a king's crown. You got to sit down. You got to earn that. You can't go to the marketplace and say, I'm going to buy a platinum crown for a mouse. So, that way there's an avenue for kind of a lot of different play styles, the types of achievements you like to go after, or do you like to accumulate resources? School thinks the shadow trap is too fast to get. Yeah, it's tricky, right? If you try to imagine if the area existed like this on day one, and maybe some of it's just through the lens of because something was one way, anytime something changes, obviously it's going to cause a little bit of a split of, there's things you liked about it before it changed and things you like better about it after it changed. But, if it all kind of released as it was, then this conversation wouldn't even be happening. So, it's kind of food for thought. And it's good feedback for us for other areas as well. Yoshiro, is there any chance to buy a feather or key using eggs after buying both traps? We're kind of like I said, we're kind of on the back burner any future changes to the area. No plans to add it for eggs. Kind of want to see what this does where this should help players finish their castle runs. So, which should indirectly mean there's more keys and feathers, right? Because more people are capturing giants. They're not spending 3 weeks with Gouda armed to capture one giant every month. they're actually exiting the castle more frequently. So you're capturing those giants, you're getting the keys, you're getting the feathers, you're engaging in the noise, and you're finding rooms to exit on. So we kind of want to see where that lands before we make any decisions. So, again, like I said earlier, I think there's an element of time to just digest feedback, parse everything, and kind of collate the wide breadth, the wide variety of feedback we've had. Jack, that's what you loved about library assignments. They took you around the map. They had varying goals. Makes it fun. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be nice to breathe some new life into them, perhaps one day. But they also had their shortcomings as well. They were a bit polarizing of a content as well, where I think some people enjoyed the traveling around, using different traps, and pursuing very unique goals. Whereas that, well, for other people who didn't enjoy that, they definitely vocalized that they didn't enjoy that very much. Yeah, School, the multi-area thing was cool back in the Jungle of Dread, Dracano, Acolyte Realm days where they all tied into each other. It would be nice to have that again. Well, it wasn't too long ago. You think about the Queso Canyon, right? All those areas blend together. The river, and getting your pump upgraded using the notch ore that you get from the quarry. You're getting leaves to get better cheese that you can use in 2 out of 3 of those locations. And then the geyser, kind of put the exclamation mark on the end of that as well. And yeah, for sure, when kind of time permits and the opportunities there, I like that style as well. I like kind of having multiple locations, even the original 3 folklore forest areas, right? Just one release before the Beanstalk was spread across 3 areas. Speaking of the new Super Mouse, have you considered having it in all the areas of the Beanstalk and not just the vine? Well, I mean, it is a vine mouse, and it's to kind of add a little extra reward for players using Super Brie, primarily not to fail to attract, but even just long term, kind of want all the cheese to have some unique encounter pools, which means we need a few more mice in the mix. But it really wouldn't make sense to be in the castle because it's a vine mouse. It would kind of change its identity. Maybe if it was like some sort of bean themed mouse, it might have some narrative sense to it. But at least right now, no plans to add it to the castle. Leaping Lavish cheese seems placed oddly in the browser version to you. Would it have sense to have after Royal? Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, it's in sort of the upgrade tier, right? It's made from Lavish, so Beanster makes Lavish, Lavish makes Leaping Lavish, and Lavish makes Royal. So, neither here nor there, but it's a tool to help you get, Ruby as much as it is a tool to help you get eggs. So I'm sure no matter where we placed it, I think somebody would have had the opposite opinion as well. So it might just be kind of one of those flip a coin and you're going to be wrong half the time anyway. Ryan, hello, I'm a returning hunter. When is Ronza coming? Well, Ryan, you have now delayed her by another day. Every time you speak her name, she comes one day later. That seems to be her unofficial lore. No, I'm just kidding. We haven't had any word from the traveling merchant, Ryan. Yeah, Peter, no plans to add that mouse into the castle. I mean, feedback received. It'll definitely be on our minds anytime we occasionally add new mice to existing areas, and that'll be on our mind. That there's always a little bit of friction to it. But if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, right, who's been through the castle a bunch of times, then they'd ask for the opposite thing. So really, we just have to kind of do what makes sense, kind of with a blank slate. If we're going to add a mouse, it kind of can't come through the lens of where a few people are at, because not everyone's at the same sort of progress spot, right? It's just tricky. And so, it's a difficult spot to be in, but even if, you don't have to get the crown tomorrow. You'll slowly but surely work your way up there. Just being in the Beanstalk area, every time you finish a run, you'll be back on the stalk. And maybe just take a break from that, go into the castle for a little bit, and it'll come with time. You're in the same boat as everybody else, and then you'll have all the more bragging rights when you're in that crown. School, are feathers and keys being considered for map rewards, or definitely not like fertilizer? I think they would be in the mix, but like I said, we'd have to kind of wait and see. Right now, I think we're just going to kind of sit back for a little bit. We're working on the new area before we think about maps too much. Just kind of let some of the dust settle from a few other changes before, like I said, maps are inevitably going to introduce more changes to an existing area, which, can be stressful. So we just kind of want to provide a little bit more time. Maybe let the creative juices recharge just a little bit. Michael asking what the title requirement for the next area would be. I don't think we're done with Viceroy, so I don't think we're ready for an area above Viceroy. That said, it would come sort of after, like in terms of in the chain of progression, it would come after the Beanstalk. So I think that kind of rules out it being lower than Viceroy. That said, I don't think we're ready for an area higher than Viceroy, seeing as there's only one. Last, welcome back. You took a 4-year break. I'm glad to have you back, hopefully, and glad to hear you're having some fun. Sean's loving Leaping Lavish. Hope you're having a great week day. Thank you so much, Sean. Hope you're as well. Arctic missing 8 giants in a row didn't feel good. You might need to tweak that charm up a notch. Nathan, you like area subsections for less crowding on the map? Yeah, and it speaks to agency, being able to make a decision, and then that decision having a high impact on your chance of success. And so, that helps. This area might be a bit of a challenge when we look at maps, just the different phases and the different cheese and what have you. That said, you're able to target mice very effectively as well. But, I could see as well, there's some potential polarizing decisions to be made. Maybe you need the ruby mouse in the dungeon. Are you going to arm your ruby cheese in a standard zone? Do you wait and find a better room before you use such a valuable cheese, or do you value the map progression over whatever loot drop you're going to get from that cheese? So there's some nuances to these maps that we're going to maybe just take some time to think over. School, the Jungle Dracano Acolyte realm felt a little different being across regions too, rather than the Queso Canyon complex or the early Fofo. Yeah, fair enough. It's just a different vibe crossing over storylines like that. Yeah, the golden goose eggs do not hatch. Yeah, they're solid gold, by the way. So there's no reproductive properties in those eggs. They're just solid gold. There's no there's no life potential inside those eggs. So alas, you cannot have a goose that lays eggs that hatch more geese that lay more eggs. Those are just solid nuggets of gold. All right. Jack, you thought it started at Claw Shot, ended at Queso Geyser? Yeah, it's subjective, right? I tend to group them together when the resources all start blending together in sort of a high impactful way. But, there's definitely areas unlocked the next area. Is the Warpath part of Murday? Is Murday part of the Living Garden? You kind of have to go through them all, and even narrative-wise, they all tie in. The city is under siege from the Marching Flame. You save the city. You restore the city to its former glory, and now you get to find the garden up top. So, in a ways, they're all linked. One leads into another. But, it's a little bit different from areas where literally you're collecting a resource to use it in another area to get something to use in another area. Will there be an M1000 mouse? I think the ship has sailed on that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we're well over 1,000 mice, so the ship has sailed on that. Can ultimate charms be used in Ultimate Umbra to have an effect on the Terrified Avenger attraction? No, I guess. Owen, can we get the probabilities of the rooms before they were adjusted? It would be nice to know how on the ball we were tracking them. I don't know them off the top of my head. They didn't get changed all that much. I think the ultimate room in the Great Hall, I think, is about a 3% difference. It's basically just a nudge upwards. But where the big impact comes is actually that has an exponential effect with Leaping Lavish. So Leaping Lavish lets you see more rooms per hunt, if that makes sense. Or maybe an easier way to think about that is every day you can see more rooms. If you hunt 60 times a day, 80, whatever, you can only see so many rooms. If you're doing 60 hunts a day, that means you get to see 3 rooms every day. But now 60 hunts with Leaping Lavish, you get to see a lot more rooms per day. So it has this compounding effect. And so we just kind of aimed, we tweaked things for a few reasons. One, to have just roughly, it was tough to make it completely equal, but how rare are 4 chevrons? How rare do I get to see just the ultimate tier appear? And it's at least roughly closer within the castle. The ballroom, you have both ultimate harpstring and ultimate ruby rooms, and kind of those added together kind of is the same as the ultimate lavish, the same as the ultimate egg, just roughly speaking. And so we just kind of gave them a little bit of a nudge so with this compounding effect over the course of, like 90, 100 hunts, whatever it is, with leaping, it's just statistically highly improbable to not find that ultimate room. Whereas if you are hunting through it with Gouda, you could still be there a very long time because the room rarity hasn't been brought up that much. It's more about being able to see the rooms or more rooms per hunt is kind of what really has this add-on effect. The two things synergize well, and just really lets you see ultimate rooms quicker. That said, you do still, part of the goal is to take some of those hunts from the Great Hall, if you're just kind of coasting looking for that room, and move some of them into the ballroom to kind of, okay, I'm going to collect harp strings, and then I can take some of the time I invested in the ballroom to help me find ultimate rooms. So kind of roughly, the time frame might look similar when you zoom out far enough. Because you're kind of incorporating the whole loop into there, not just kind of, sure, when you make it to the Great Hall and you have all the resources you need, it's quicker, but there's the time needed to collect those resources as well. Dave, you mentioned some tweaks to enhance the Valor Rift a few ago. Could we revisit that? Yeah, shame on me for even mentioning everything, but sometimes it's nice to do a temperature check just to kind of float that out to see if even just a rumor causes any poignant suggestions or feedback or any eyebrows go up. But yeah, nothing on that. We were looking to, maybe do something where every time you maybe don't get to the prestige level you were looking for, it'll help you get there next time. And then, but it kind of tapers off. But that said, no plans to actually realize that, but it was just kicking around the idea bank. Suba, any ideas for a base that's better to get than Prestige? Well, there's a few hints of the game about what base may eventually outclass the Prestige. You might be able to tell where we're going with that. Ashley, could we have something that's a small but useful benefit to a higher rank? Yeah, I agree, Ashley. I kind of think that's a great idea. It's just one we haven't been able to realize. But it would be nice. Even originally we thought we were going to draw the line at Archduke. That was going to kind of be the last area requirement title. And then, areas could maybe have extra abilities as you have a higher hunter's title. The original floating islands, which looked nothing like how the floating islands turns out, it actually had infinite randomly generated islands to explore, and you'd fly through the sky and just kind of keep island hopping, if you will. And sometimes you'd come across ones like you have to be an elder to go to this island. You have to be a viceroy for this island. That's kind of where we wanted to go with that. But alas, we haven't been able to quite realize that. But I agree it's a good idea. We just, unfortunately, haven't been able to pull it off. David, when can we expect another Super Brie sale? I think the last one we did was part of a King's giveaway. Other than that, some of the limited time offers that pop up in the shop include Super Brie, and they're often a good deal. You could, even if it's stuff that you don't want, kind of the nice thing about trading is you can sell what you don't want to buy what you do want. Hey, Hayes, awaiting Ronza. Oh, did we make the joke again? You just delayed her by another day? No, I'm just joking, Hey. I think we all are, but alas, haven't heard anything from her. Shay, unstable goose egg. We'll see. The original design of the area had it so that the eggs, you could actually crack them open for loot, and then you could take a bunch of them and buy a goose with them. But just the economy of it just didn't work out by the end of the area. It just didn't end up scaling too well, where each individual egg was just, I don't know, didn't really have anything special in it. It was hard to even make it fun to do it. So I don't know. We'll see. Alex, the room quality and room type roll are independent roles, right? I guess technically no. Every time you reach a new room, it picks another. Like, you can almost think like the rooms have their own identity. It doesn't pick bean room and then picks a random rarity of it. it picks, standard bean, extreme ruby, like they all have their own identity. Okay, what's the fastest way to collect fabled fertilizer? Well, Leaping Lavish can help out a little bit. You could rush to the end of the room, then arm a different cheese, play your harp a little bit. Probably you're not going to reach max noise in 4 hunts, but rush to the end of the room, play the harp, before you get to the end of the room, and then, go back out in 20 hunts. So, you can get fertilizer every 24 hunts that way. That said, if you do that a lot, that works well when you're in this zone where it's like, hey, I have a lot of resources. All I need is fertilizer. But kind of the more you start to do that, you start to get fertilizer, but you're not replenishing your bean supply. So, if you do too much of it, you kind of end up resetting yourself. It's a little bit like doing an epic eruption and use all wildfire. Then by the end of it, it's like I'm risking I have to almost restart the whole cycle and start collecting leaves and everything again. I got to get some more bland queso built up. Whereas if you mix in a little bit of flaming, it helps you sustain your momentum a little bit. So you might want to find a good middle ground. Potato, you may have missed it here, but are the plans to release the auto harp with maps? I mean, we shall see. We shall see. We're trying to keep all of our options open. But, we've broken ground on this a little bit. But maps need a little bit of design time as well. And like I said, usually the map release is kind of the follow-up where, maybe we make a few adjustments based on feedback. But we kind of prioritized it to get just Leaping Lavish was a big enough change that we wanted to get it in there sooner rather than later. Basically, the longer you wait to make some changes, the more friction there is. And it's understandable. And, there's certainly been a fair share of a lot of complaints and a lot of kind of nasty words thrown our way for changing some things. So, we're going to kind of take time to parse through all that, recharge the creative juices a little bit before we go on another creative adventure of adding anything new to the area. Wax, is it possible to get higher than T18 for the prestige? Well, I mean, never say never, right? I mean, it comes down to, it's a long enough journey that it's hard to be lucky for that long, but who knows? Potato, you think at this point people are asking Ronza just to stall her arrival further right now? We're just joking. It's just a long-standing tongue-in-cheek joke. No harm intended at all. I'm sure she'll arrive at some point. Who knows where she's lurking, though. Jonathan, a bit off topic, but a few of us were looking at the catch rate estimation formula. It is a little bit of a black box. Long term, it's a goal. We'd like to overhaul. We could sit here and actually chat for a whole half hour about the history of the trap effectiveness meter, what started off as a bug and became a feature. And as you can imagine, that means it's not crafted in the most intentful way. But we have long-term plans to basically reimagine that trap effectiveness meter, show you just your exact chance to catch a mouse with power, with luck overall. But I shouldn't even say that because we're years out. But we'd like to get there. But it involves some game engine work because there are parts of the game engine that are not deterministic, or in other words, we don't know what happens until it's already happened, which means I don't know what your chance of capturing a mouse is until you actually go on that hunt. And I know that sounds a little bit messed up, but it is what it is. But there's just a few parts of the game engine that aren't deterministic, or at least not easy to utilize in a deterministic way. But we've got, we'd like to overhaul the game engine to realize perhaps some more useful features, but it'll take some time. Why is it called fabled fertilizers? It's something only hunters with the fabled rank can use because, well, yeah, fair enough, actually. The original folklore forest, it was called the fabled forest. But we landed on folklore forest just to kind of avoid any confusion there. Maybe we should have called it, folklore fertilizer, I guess. But alas, fabled can mean more than one thing, can mean more than just the hunter's title. Well, shall we move on to the trivia? Where are we at? We're at 50 minutes. This week's trivia is a Beanstalk question. I think this one's pretty clever, actually. We're going to see if anybody gets this. With enough guesses, you can get it. There's only a finite number of answers. But this week's trivia question does involve the Beanstalk, and it's what dungeon mouse, there's even a hint, it's a dungeon mouse, shared a characteristic with a particularly famous mountain personality. This seems like right out of, right out of Jeopardy. We should have made it the answer, and you'd have to phrase it as a question. Don't know what happens. Yeah, without getting too technical, it's just not easy to do in when it comes to the chance to catch a mouse. Basically, some things need to change to be able to answer that question easily without kind of writing it down, storing it somewhere, and returning it later, at least for any setup. 64, Alex is incorrect. I forget the answer. Hold on one sec. There we go. I think Nathan's got it right. Nathan, partial marks. You've got half the name. Cheese has got the other half. Cheese gets full marks for yes, it is the Wrathful Warden. Wrathful Warden, sorry. Wrathful. It is indeed the Wrathful Warden, which you can attract using ruby cheese in the dungeon, which makes it a tricky mouse to encounter. I'll put this link in the chat for your clicking convenience, and lo and behold, it is a little something to help you make some ruby cheese. I'm going to claim this. I'm making sure to claim this one. There are some ruby beans waiting for you, some royal ruby beans waiting for you on that reward link. And in the description, actually, I should have included the description of the mouse. The only thing capable of distracting this attentive authoritarian from his duties is the luxurious scent. Wait, did I pick the wrong mouse? No, there it is. Sorry, this mean, merciless, mustachioed brute runs a tight, no-nonsense dungeon. As opposed to those, dungeons where there's nonsense allowed. All right, he means business. Down around those prison blocks there, but yeah. He's a mustachio mouse, which, yeah, that's an actual word, to have the characteristics of having a mustache. But that is quite the stash that mouse is rocking. He's got to groom that daily, I would think. Definitely conditions, all right? There's a two-step process. Mountains have personalities. It's Mustachio the Charmer is a mountain personality. Is the person in question. Alas, it is not geese or feathers. I don't think that's in the drop-down box for Larry given a reward. Once upon a time, it was a drop-down box containing every single item in the game, and I just got way too nervous. I think this is where this line of joke came from. It's like, don't misclick, especially sometimes, if cheddar cheese, I don't think Larry usually doesn't hand out cheddar cheese, but if that was right next to something extremely valuable, it's like, well, either it's cheddar cheese or it's something valuable. Careful. Thank you, Michelle. Paste in the description into the chat. There you go. This mean, merciless, mustachioed brute runs a tight, no-nonsense dungeon with strict rules and even stricter punishments. It's the mustachioed part of this mouse description. Shares with Mustachio the Charmer in the mountain. I should have grabbed a picture of Mustachio as well. Mustachio probably has best in show mustache award throughout the kingdom. Nathan, who doesn't have a favorite mustachioed plumber? We're gonna, there's certain times you learn certain words in games. Mustachioed can be a word we can learn. I didn't know it was an actual word. 16Y, lucky. Powers of 2. I don't know. You can get 16 to drop in the dungeon. Does Giorgio look like Mustachio? Not quite. More beard than mustache, maybe. Well, alas, Hunters, we probably should wrap things up. We're narrowing in on the hour mark here. I think it'll most likely be Jacob joining in next week. Swift picking up on a little bit of a trend. Will each subsequent area also have the Mythweaver as boss and a different character? You might be picking up on a little bit of the storyline there. Something to be continued. We shall see. Pistachioed, an underrated nut. Well, Hunters, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I think it'll probably be Jacob joining in next week to do an art edition, unless he is off or there's a change of plans. Actually, come to think of it, I feel like there's a holiday coming up. I'm not the best with dates. No, that's another week away. All right, great. Michelle, thanks, Dave. Have a good weekend. You as well, Michelle. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Nafa, can we get prestige base to show the floors or bonus on mobile? I tried. Nafa, I tried. Again, kind of game engine work required. I don't mean to use that as an excuse because it'll become a tired excuse. Personally, I sat down for a few days and I tried my best to get that to work. And I mean, there's probably a way through some just hack, just brute force to get it to go, but there's not like a nice, easy to maintain way, unfortunately. But hey, it's on the list of we want to overhaul the game engine and just allow us to build cooler features and add better stuff to the game, and it kind of has to come down to that. So it's a little bit like, hey, we got to relay the foundation of the house, which means the house has to kind of move and be rebuilt. So alas, I tried my best. I wasn't able to do it in a way, at least that we'd be comfortable maintaining in perpetuity. So, unfortunately, no, you can't see the stats of your prestige base until you actually arm it on your trap. Kind of goes back to that, a little off topic there, but like non-deterministic things are just, in the world of programming, we call it dependency injection. And there's a lack of dependency injection when it comes to a few things in the game, and it makes it hard to calculate things without having a very elaborate state that it has to be sitting in just the state for you to know what the numbers are, versus being able to pass in input and get the same output every time. So anyway, before we venture down into the world of computer programming, that's probably my cutest skidoo. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Happy hunting. Like I said, probably Jacob next week. There is a holiday coming up that may affect Feedback Friday as well, so it might be a few weeks before I see you next. I'm not quite sure, but I imagine Jacob will probably fill you in between now and then. As always, we usually put up a news ticker up in the browser version of the game and try our best to get the word out as well if there isn't going to be a Feedback Friday. Thanks for joining me. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you around, Hunters.
You're a trap, don't seem to mind it. You attract me. I'm a mouse, you're a cat. I don't seem to mind it. Soft and furry. Oh, and just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Just when you think you're safe, snap. I come back. You don't seem to mind it, but I'm a fool. Broke my back. You don't seem to mind it, 'cause you're so cool. And just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Ooh. And just when you think you're safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Ooh. Just when I think I'm safe, oh. Turns out I'm never safe. Oh, just when you think you're safe, it turns out I'm never safe. Ooh. Turns out I'm never safe.